Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub, a somewhat improvised approach to mental health. My name is Glenn Sollers. Thanks for tuning in today. And today I'm going to talk about well-being, which ties into emotional intelligence. The Gallup organization in 2022 did a worldwide workplace survey about what is going on with employees, what's on their mind. And what they found out were that stress levels are increasing. And we all know that stress leads to dis-ease, anxieties, conflict avoidance, all these different things. And they said what's really important to overcome this, and organizations need to understand this and train their leaders to do this, is something called well-being. And what is well-being, you may ask? And when I looked at the definition, it is a state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Now, when I think of well-being, that is all emotional based. Happiness is an emotion. And our emotions lead to our health, which leads to our level of comfort. So it's all tied in. And when I hear people talking about the fact that, and some people say this, they don't even know how to access their emotions and that it's not that important. Oh my gosh, emotions drive our behaviors. It drives our thoughts. And that's what humans do. If we don't investigate our emotions, we may not understand why do we have certain behaviors. Like, for example, if I need to deal with conflict with somebody, I could read tons of books on how to deal with conflict. Well, I know the how. Intellectually, I know what to do. Well, why don't I just resolve the conflict? It's because of a feeling I have. I feel like something's not going to work, or I'm afraid of it, right? Or if you are jumping off a bridge into water and you know that it's completely safe, and I did this before, I wouldn't jump because I felt afraid. Logically, I knew everything was going to be fine, but I didn't do it. And this is what is part of well-being as well, is creating an environment in your work, in your family life, where people feel like they're comfortable, they're happy, they're healthy, and there's an emotional connection there. There are 4 domains in emotional intelligence. And this is something I teach, and it's something that's becoming more and more important in respect to leadership. It's not about intellect necessarily, because people, and this is a quote by Maya Angelou, stated that people may forget what you did, they may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So if you as an individual can connect with your emotions, you're more likely to create a good feeling with others. There are 4 domains in emotional intelligence, and one is self-awareness, that you have self-awareness of your emotions, which is as simple as, okay, I'm feeling sad right now. Okay, now I know I'm feeling sad. I'm not going to suppress it. I'm going to go a step further, and then I'm going to get into what's called self-management, which is, okay, now what? What do I do? I have this emotion of sadness. What action do I need to take, or what's missing that's going to help me go through that sadness? Once I manage my own emotions, I'm then better able to have some empathy and social awareness. What's going on outside of me? So it's not about me, it's about the we. Once I can have that empathy and start to listen and understand what others are going through, then I have relationship power, which means that I can influence, I can coach, I can resolve things that need to be resolved, I can focus on teamwork. So these are all important in an organization and in a family unit. So a number of things came up for me this week. First of all, the one thing I want to talk about is when I interviewed my stepson, it was very enlightening about his level of emotional intelligence and how he's grown over time. And it made me reflect on the importance of parents to become more emotionally aware. And I saw a client this week, and I've never met him in person. It was only through Zoom, and he and I hit it off. He just shared with me that I got married recently, and my wife and I are working through how to best work together. We are making emotional connections. We're learning a lot about our history and how our history informs who we are today. And therefore, we can start resolving issues and not taking things personally. And it was so enlightening being with this younger person because, wow, I wish I went through a course, because that's what he did. He went through a course. It was a gateway course where he and his wife went to it, and they started to understand what relationship is all about and the importance of understanding your spouse and their programming and their emotions and getting that connection, because he is such a happy individual and he's so excited in his marriage. And if I would have done a course like that with my ex-wife, things would be a lot different because I avoided conflict. I was afraid of speaking up. I didn't share things. I was a people pleaser. And wow, did my child learn a lot from me around that. That's the other thing. If we don't work on ourselves, if we don't understand our spouse, then it can create a bit of a dysfunctional parental environment. And here's an example. My wife and I struggled with my son's emotions. He would have a temper tantrum at times. He would get very, very upset. And so he was very emotional, which is fine. He expressed himself. It was a lot for me. It was a lot for my wife. And there was times where my wife said, you know what, Glenn, you have to deal with it. I just need to get away. And the big message here for me is we definitely lacked emotional intelligence because somebody else's emotions triggered our emotions. And then my son probably learned you run away from your emotions. You don't deal with it versus what we should have done. And folks, when I get into the past, I don't want you to get so upset about the past because you can't change the past. It happened. But what you can do is learn from the past and then grow and develop and go on a self-awareness journey and actually do things differently going forward, which creates more social connection, which creates more love and community with other people, because wherever we go, there we are. And if we don't change ourselves, then it might be tough sometimes to actually create healthy spaces that are emotionally open to others so we can enhance their well-being. So what my son witnessed was one person running away from it, the other person trying to deal with it, but I was upset. And I see this in life that there's many of us that will run away from our emotions. We were never taught how to deal with our emotions. We were never taught, stop, figure things out, calm down, because this is really about me, not about you. And once I can calm me down and once I can recognize my emotions, I'm better able to deal with other people, right? Again, tons of how-to books out there, but we're not going to do what we know we should do if we don't feel good about it. So feelings are the root of behaviors. So that's number one, is with your partner, your spouse, it's important to have that emotional connection, because I can tell you when I am emotionally connected to my wife, I feel so much gratitude, so much love. I feel so free and authentic. I feel so connected to her. And I'm so grateful that she's working on her emotional connection, because it's a learned behavior. Like many of us might have learned how to do that when we're younger, but I would say the majority did not. And once we can get to that level and figure this stuff out, we become more engaging human beings because we're leading with authenticity. We're dealing with stuff. We're checking in with our emotions, and we're moving forward. And another good example of this is I know somebody who recently had a stroke, and she is an important part of her life. We want her to visit us where we are, and she knows that it's completely safe coming to our house. She knows all the logic, all the intellect, but her stroke actually impacted her feelings. So she can't do it. She can't come over because her body is saying no. It again is just an example of how our feelings dictate our behaviors. And if we can't get into our feelings, we may not know why we're not doing what we know we should be doing. But if I can stop and check in with my feelings and what's going on, then I can start doing things that I know I should be doing, but maybe I'm running away from. I was listening to a podcast and some videos. For whatever reason, this gentleman's name popped up on my YouTube, Kenny Weiss. I like to call it Kenny Weiss. Weiss in German means nose. And he has so many videos out there, Weiss. And a lot of his stuff is based on cognitive-based therapy, on things that I've learned through Landmark, the Mankind Project, Clear Beliefs coaching. So it's a mixture of different ideas. And one thing that really helped me out when I was listening to his video, and I didn't do the whole thing because some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't make sense. And it all depends. Like, we're all different, right? And what he states is, if you want to let go of locked in emotions, because we all have emotions locked somewhere, and sometimes we just have problems accessing it. And if we can actually figure out how to access it, we can then release and work with it and then feel freer to move forward and do the right thing. For example, I've always needed recognition. It makes me sad that, of course, that I don't have my son in my life. So I sat with that. And this was the first step that he walks through, is to say to yourself, and folks, you can do this with me right now, is stop for a moment and breathe and consider, what are you feeling right now? What are you feeling right now? And it could be sadness, shame, fear, anger, happiness, joy, excitement, disgust, whatever it might be. To feel it in your body. And where does it reside in your body? For some, it might be in your head. And this is exactly what it was for me. So when I started doing this, I was feeling sadness, and then I started going back in time. And that's the next thing that you do, is you look at your feeling, whatever it is. So there was some sadness there. And then you go back and say, okay, when did I feel sadness the last time? Okay, a year ago, or whatever it might be. Okay, then you go back and back and back into your life. And eventually you might connect with something there that is the true feeling, the thing that's really driving the sadness. And for me, what showed up was, I fear speaking up. I fear sharing what's on my mind. I fear advocating my needs. And wow, when I connected with that, and then I went deeper into my body sensations, it felt like my cortex was going to explode. The front of my head felt like, you know, those whales that have this big thing on the front of their head. That's what mine felt like. And I was trying to relive the moment around, well, when did this start? And I know when it started, ultimately. I grew up in a home where you would never speak up, where I had to process a lot of stuff on my own, where I was very afraid to say anything. So that was really interesting, because then I got down to a bit of the root of it. Glenn is afraid of speaking up. I have a lot of fear. As I went into that, he gets into, well, what is the mantra that you had developed and you've stuck with over time? And the mantra for me, I'm still trying to figure this out, was, I am afraid of talking. I'm not quite there yet in respect to what it is. And it didn't really matter, because I got to where I needed to go. The next part, he says, is that sometimes these things that we have about ourselves, these mantras, are created to survive, and they don't belong to us. Somebody else has imposed these on us. And there's this visualization exercise that I did through Clear Beliefs coaching, which helps you deal with it. So I did that in my mind. I did this visualization exercise, and I had to give it back to my parents, because that's what my parents did, and my brother to a certain extent as well. So I had them all envisaged, they were in front of me, and I then said, this is yours, that you're afraid to speak up, and you put that on me. Instantly, and this sounds a bit weird, but their bodies shrunk. And then I saw a bit about their history. And I had this realization that my parents, being from Germany, they grew up during the war. Their parents had to deal with the war. There was a lot of secrecy. There was a lot of keeping quiet. Don't talk. Wow. I connected with, this is just something that they've probably learned to do. And they did it with me. And also when my mom and dad should have been communicating, they weren't. They weren't talking about stuff. So there was a fear of communicating. The only time my dad would really communicate openly was in an aggressive way when he drank too much. So it was very unhealthy. So it's no wonder I had this fear. But as soon as I did this, I just sat with the emotion. I created a new way of thinking and believing and feeling in these moments. And it allowed me to process everything. What this gentleman, Kenny, recommends doing is that you give this mantra or whatever it might be back to the rightful owner, but then you write a rage letter about just getting super upset and raging out about it. And you don't send it to anybody, but by the time I went through my own process, because I did it through my clear beliefs coaching thing, I was fine. I was actually happy. I was in a really good place, and I really connected with that. My open heart connects me with others. And that's my mantra now. But then he says, yeah, write this rage letter. Don't do anything with it. And then what you can do is then beat up a pillow or something, like take all the rage out and get rid of it. Like you're trying to get rid of this emotion. So you're really accessing that emotion. You're feeling it. You're living it, and you're doing maybe what you couldn't have done way back when, because way back when I couldn't have raged out. So what I'm doing essentially is completing the cycle that if I was the Glenn I am now, back to when I was 3 or 4 years old, I would have stood up and said, screw you. I am going to do this. Don't talk to me that way. And I deserve respect. However, I couldn't do that. So by raging, you're kind of essentially doing that, where you're starting to connect and complete the cycle so that when I do speak up, I don't have the fear, or I know where it comes from and I can put it aside. However, again, this means that I need to connect with my emotions. Our emotions drive our behaviors. So when I did this process, what I added was, what is it that I'm feeling now that I have this new mantra? Well, I'm feeling really happy. I'm feeling really content. And I actually felt a great deal of well-being. I was in a state of being comfortable, happy, and that's likely going to have some implications on my health. Folks, what I want to leave you with today is that if you and your spouse or your partner cannot connect with each other emotionally, there may be challenges later on. When the kids are out of the house, when it's just the two of you, what is life going to be like? Are you going to be completely independent because there's no emotional connection? There's no distraction there anymore, because we live in such a world of distraction as well. It's like we're all running away, running. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all these things, YouTube videos. We're in a distracted world. It's kind of like we're not even spending time with the one person that's the most important, which is me, and being with me. Because if I can be with me and I can be with my emotions and I can process it, I'm dealing with stuff. And I know, based on my life, that the more I can connect with my emotions, the more I can connect with others. But if we are not willing to connect with our emotions, maybe things are going to work out. My hope is with you. Maybe it's not. However, if we can build our emotional intelligence, we will build love, and we'll build a great future for our children, for our friends, for our family. Folks, thanks for listening.